Aaron Vale moved quietly down the narrow, dim corridor of the old citadel. The walls were carved from stone that shimmered faintly in dragon light, and the air smelled of metal and dust. Most of the citadel's hallways were forbidden to humans, but Aaron was a technician, and his orders allowed him here. He had been told to repair some old machinery in a forgotten wing. Nothing important, they said. Just maintenance. As he rounded a corner, he saw it. A small, broken object lay on the floor. It looked like a toy made of tiny gears and polished crystals. Sparks flickered where a wire had snapped, and one of its tiny wings hung at an odd angle. Aaron crouched, careful not to step on anything else in the dusty hall. He heard a soft sound, almost like a whisper. His head turned sharply. A pair of green eyes, wide and bright, peeked at him from behind a pillar. The dragon child was no bigger than a cat, with scales that glimmered like emeralds in the dim light. Aaron froze. He had read about these young dragons but had never seen one in person. Most dragons avoided humans, and the ones that stayed close were dangerous. The child tilted its head, curious but cautious. Aaron smiled, a small gesture. "I won't hurt you," he said softly, almost to himself. The dragon's tail flicked nervously, but it stayed hidden. He reached for the toy, inspecting it carefully. The gears were twisted, some wires had burned, and a small crystal lens was cracked. It would take patience, skill, and the right tools. Aaron opened his repair kit, laying out screwdrivers, wires, and a tiny hammer. As he worked, he spoke quietly, though not expecting the dragon to understand. "You know, I used to fix toys for my little sister," he said. "She always loved the ones that nobody else cared about." He adjusted a tiny gear, then replaced a burned wire. Sparks flew briefly and he winced. The dragon child shifted closer, drawn by the movement, its eyes fixed on every careful motion. Hours passed, though it felt shorter. Aaron's hands moved with steady skill. He polished the toy's crystal wings and replaced the lens. He hummed softly, a habit from home. The dragon child had moved closer now, resting one tiny claw on the floor beside him. Aaron noticed it but did not react. He had to focus. Finally, with a small click, the toy's gears began to move. Tiny lights blinked, and a small wing lifted gracefully. Aaron leaned back and exhaled. "There. Good as new." The dragon child let out a soft chirp, a sound of pure delight. Its eyes sparkled even brighter, and it took a cautious step forward. Aaron extended a hand slowly. The dragon sniffed it, then nudged the toy toward him. It was offering, as if saying, "Thank you." Aaron picked up the toy, spinning it gently in his hands. The dragon tilted its head, watching every movement. Aaron chuckled. "You really like this, don't you?" A soft rumble echoed from somewhere deep in the walls. Aaron froze. The citadel was old, but it was alive with surveillance, even in the forbidden wings. He had heard stories of the Emperor's eyes everywhere. For a moment he felt exposed. But the dragon child seemed unconcerned, only happy with its toy. Suddenly, a shadow moved far above, hidden in the darkness of the high hall. Aaron did not see it, but the Emperor's presence was there. The ruler of all dragons watched silently, unseen, curious about this human who treated a dragon child with care instead of fear. The Emperor's golden eyes glowed faintly, reflecting in the walls like twin suns. Aaron noticed the dragon child's wings twitching with excitement. It leapt onto a nearby crate, then onto his shoulder, careful and light. Aaron froze for a moment, then allowed it. "I guess we're friends for now," he said. The dragon chirped again, circling his arm with delight. He finished the toy's final adjustments, tightening the last screw and polishing it until it gleamed. The child picked it up and pressed a small button, sending the tiny wings spinning and the lights flashing. It laughed, a sound Aaron had never heard from a dragon, pure and bright, full of joy. Aaron smiled, feeling something strange in his chest. This was no ordinary repair job. Somehow, fixing a toy had become more than that. He realized he had made a connection, simple and honest, that even the strict rules of the citadel could not erase. A small breeze passed through the hall, carrying dust and the faint hum of old machines. Aaron felt eyes on him even if he could not see them. Somewhere far above, in the highest throne room, the Emperor's gaze lingered. He watched silently, studying the human who did not bow or fear, who worked with patience and care for something small yet important. The dragon child chirped again, pressing the toy against Aaron's chest. He laughed softly. "I think it likes you more than me," he said. The dragon coiled around his arm, tiny claws resting gently on his shoulder, eyes bright and trusting. For the first time, Aaron understood something important. Strength and fear were not the only ways to earn respect in this world. Sometimes, kindness, patience, and a simple touch of care could create a bond stronger than any power. Far above, the Emperor leaned back on his golden throne, silent and thoughtful. His eyes followed every small motion, every careful gesture. A human, he thought, could teach even dragons something new. The hall was quiet again, save for the soft clicking of the toy and the dragon child's soft chirps. Aaron looked at the creature, then at the repaired toy. "We'll have adventures, little one," he said, smiling. "And I'll be here, fixing what breaks." The dragon chirped again, curling happily on his shoulder. Aaron Vale had come to the Forbidden Hall to fix old machines. He had left with something far more valuable, the trust of a tiny dragon, and unknowingly the attention of the most powerful being in the galaxy. The shadows in the hall seemed to stretch and shimmer. Somewhere the Emperor watched, and the story of a human's quiet courage had already begun. Aaron Vale did not sleep that night. He had returned to his small quarters in the lower wing of the citadel, but his mind kept drifting back to the tiny dragon Aelrix and the toy he had repaired. Even now he could hear the soft imaginary clicks and chirps in his mind. He had not expected this kind of connection, not with a dragon, not in a place as cold and strict as the citadel. The next morning, Aaron returned to the Forbidden Hall. The toy was gone from the floor. At first he worried that someone had taken it, perhaps the guards or other technicians. But then a soft chirp sounded behind him. Aelrix landed lightly on his shoulder, the toy spinning between its claws. The tiny dragon's eyes glimmered with pure joy, and it nudged the toy toward him again as if showing off. Aaron laughed softly. "You're really happy, aren't you?" he said. Aelrix chirped in response, spinning in the air and landing again. Its wings shimmered with sunlight filtering through cracks in the hall, and for a moment the entire forbidden wing seemed alive. Unseen by both, sensors in the hall were recording every movement, every sound. The Emperor had not blinked since he began watching. Golden eyes followed every gesture, every laugh, every careful touch the human offered. The Dragon Court had rarely seen such a thing. A human showing no fear, no desire to command, only patience and kindness. Meanwhile, whispers began to move through the citadel. A guard mentioned the human fixing the toy. A young noble repeated it with disbelief. Soon the news reached the High Council. Dragons older than the mountains argued quietly among themselves. "The human dares to touch what belongs to the Emperor's line," one said, claws tapping nervously on the stone railing. "It cannot be simple curiosity," another said. Back in the hall, Aaron continued to adjust the toy, fine-tuning its tiny gears. Aelrix watched with rapt attention, hopping from crate to crate, squeaking in excitement. The human had no idea how unusual this behavior was. Most dragons, even young ones, did not laugh. They did not play like this. They did not trust humans at all. The tiny dragon pressed the toy against Aaron's chest and chirped again. Aaron smiled, bending down to meet Aelrix's gaze. "I think it likes you more than me," he said softly, and the dragon chirped louder, spinning the toy in midair. Suddenly, a deep rumble echoed through the hall. It was not the hum of the old machines. Aaron froze. From somewhere above, a shadow passed over them, stretching across the walls like a moving cloud. The air vibrated slightly, carrying a heavy presence. The Dragon Emperor had entered the observation chamber and was watching directly. Every movement, every laugh, every careful touch of the human and the dragon child was being recorded in the mind of the ruler. The Emperor's golden eyes narrowed. "Why does this human touch what is mine?" he asked quietly to no one, but the council sensed his attention. They exchanged uneasy glances. No one had dared challenge the Emperor in decades. And yet, here was a human acting freely, without fear, without bowing. Aaron did not notice the shadow above. He focused entirely on Aelrix, adjusting a tiny gear in the toy's wing. "There," he said at last. "All fixed. It should last for a long time now." The dragon child chirped and flapped its tiny wings. The toy spun and clicked, lights flickering in a dazzling pattern. Aelrix leapt into the air, wings glowing, spinning around Aaron's head in delight. The human laughed, spinning slowly with the dragon. For a moment time seemed to slow. In all the halls of the citadel nothing else mattered, just a human and a dragon sharing a moment of pure joy. But the court outside the chamber was not calm. The nobles whispered urgently. "Did you see that?" one hissed. The human made the child laugh. "The Emperor's line has never been shown such joy without fear." Another snorted. "It is impossible. Humans are weak. They cannot understand dragons." The Emperor's presence in the hall became heavier. Golden eyes shifted from the human's careful hands to the dragon child's innocent laughter. There was no trickery, no deceit. Aaron was not asking for reward, not showing obedience, not begging for favor. He was simply caring. Something the dragons had long forgotten how to do. Aelrix flew toward a small ledge, toy clutched in claws, then back to Aaron's shoulder. "Do you see that?" Aaron said softly. "You're happy. That's all that matters." The dragon chirped and pressed its tiny snout against his cheek. Aaron laughed, brushing a small scale from its head. He did not know how dangerous it was to be this close to a royal dragon. He only knew that the child trusted him. In the council chamber, dragons argued with increasing urgency. "This human is dangerous," one exclaimed. "Not because of strength but because of influence. The child trusts him. That trust can change hearts." Another shook its head. "The Emperor himself watches silently. We cannot act without permission." The tiny dragon spun the toy again, clicking and whirring. Aelrix's laughter filled the hall, echoing off walls that had been silent for centuries. The human smiled, brushing off dust from his hands. He had never expected to cause such a stir, never expected to be noticed by the ruler of dragons. He had only wanted to fix something broken. High above, the Emperor's golden eyes softened slightly. He studied the human, studying the child, and studied the bond forming between them. "Perhaps," he said quietly, "there is more to strength than claws and fire. Perhaps there is something humans have, something we have forgotten." The council remained tense, unsure of what action to take. The halls had not seen joy like this in generations, and yet it came from a human, small and fragile in dragon terms. The story spread through the court in whispers. "The human touched the Emperor's blood," some said. "He should not exist here." But Aaron did not care about whispers or the court. He continued to laugh with Aelrix, repairing small parts of the toy that were already perfect just because it made the child happy. He had discovered something simple. Care, attention and kindness could matter more than fear or power. As sunlight filtered through cracks in the walls, Aelrix curled around the toy in Aaron's arm, purring softly. The human looked up, sensing something unseen. Somewhere high above, golden eyes watched every moment, studying the human who dared to care without fear. And the court outside trembled at the thought that a single human could inspire more joy than 1,000 dragons ever had. In the quiet hall, the bond between a tiny dragon and a human grew stronger, unnoticed by most, but not by the one who ruled all. The Emperor's presence lingered, silent and calculating, as the story of a small toy and a human's hands began to spread like wildfire through the ancient citadel. Aaron Vale returned to his work the next morning, but the halls of the citadel felt heavier than before. Word had spread quickly among the dragons, though Aaron did not know it yet. Whispers of his actions, of a human who had touched a royal dragon child without fear, had reached the ears of the High Council. Soon a summons arrived, carried by a sleek dragon messenger. It was brief and formal. He was to appear in the Imperial court. Aaron did not know what awaited him. He had only fixed a toy. He had only shared a small moment of kindness. Yet the tone of the message made him uneasy. The forbidden hall where he had met Aelrix now seemed quiet, almost empty, as if it were holding its breath. The tiny dragon chirped softly, curling around his arm. "Don't worry," Aaron whispered. "I'll be fine." The journey to the Imperial court was daunting. Massive stone pillars rose high, carved with the faces of dragons from centuries past. Aaron felt dwarfed by the scale of the architecture, and by the weight of history itself. Guards lined the corridors, their eyes glowing faintly, following his every move. None spoke, yet their presence made Aaron feel the judgment that was coming. As he entered the vast chamber, the murmurs of the council reached his ears. Noble dragons perched along golden balconies, their claws clicking against the railings. Their eyes were fixed on him, a mixture of suspicion and curiosity. Aaron held his head high, trying to appear calm. Aelrix, who had hidden nearby, peered from a shadowed corner, tail flicking nervously. The court remained silent as Aaron approached the center of the chamber. A hush fell across the room as if the walls themselves were waiting for a verdict. Aaron had faced dangerous machines, wild planets and storms of fire, but this was different. The tension here was not physical. It was the weight of 1,000 eyes judging his very presence. Finally, a voice broke the silence. It was cold and deep, carrying authority that made even the noble dragons bow slightly. "Human," it said. "You have entered the forbidden wing and touched what belongs to the Emperor's line. Explain yourself." Aaron swallowed, steadying his voice. I found a broken toy," he said simply. "It belonged to the child. I fixed it. That is all. I did not intend to disrespect anyone, and I did not know it was forbidden." A murmur ran through the council. Some dragons leaned forward, claws tapping anxiously. "Does he not understand the danger?" one asked. "He touched a member of the royal family without permission. He cannot be allowed to walk freely." Another voice, older and sharper, spoke up. "Yet see how the child reacts. The human caused no harm. He does not seek power nor does he show fear. He acts with care." Aaron looked toward Aelrix, who stepped cautiously into the open, clutching the repaired toy. The child's eyes glimmered with trust and happiness, and it pressed the toy against Aaron's chest. The chamber fell silent. Even the murmuring of the council could not mask the sound of the small dragon's chirp. One of the nobles hissed, frustrated. "Trust? This is not enough. The human cannot be trusted. What if this is trickery? What if he poisons the child's mind, teaches disobedience?" Aaron shook his head slowly. "I only fixed what was broken," he said firmly. "I do not understand politics or power or secrets. I only know that the child needed something and I helped." The council debated for hours, though it felt longer. Dragons argued about danger, respect, and tradition. Some wanted punishment, others could not deny the truth of what they had seen. The human had done nothing but show kindness. Yet kindness in a place ruled by fear and strength was dangerous. Meanwhile, the emperor watched silently from above, golden eyes unmoving. He had seen every gesture, every careful touch, every laugh and chirp shared between human and child. The court's arguments were loud, but he heard the quiet truth beneath them. A human could change hearts without power, without threats, without fire. That was a thought long forgotten in the halls of dragons. Aelrix stepped closer to Aaron, brushing against his leg. The child's eyes searched his face and Aaron bent down to meet that gaze. "It's okay," he whispered. "We'll face them together." The dragon chirped softly, a small sign of courage. Finally, a voice rang out, calm but commanding, echoing across the chamber. "Enough." The council fell silent instantly. The emperor had spoken. His golden gaze descended, locking on Aaron. "You human," he said. "You have done what dragons no longer remember. You have cared for what is fragile, without fear, without expectation." "Why?" Aaron swallowed hard. He had not expected this. He looked at the emperor, the largest and most powerful dragon he had ever seen, and spoke honestly. "Because someone cared about it," he said. "The toy was broken. The child loved it. I fixed it. That is all I know." A quiet ripple passed through the council. Some dragons shook their heads in disbelief. Others whispered among themselves, their voices tinged with awe. The emperor's eyes did not waver. He studied the human, then the child, then the repaired toy spinning slowly in Aelrix's claws. Aelrix chirped again, holding the toy out to Aaron as if asking him to continue the bond. Aaron reached out and accepted it, spinning it carefully. He smiled, trying to ignore the tension of the court. This small moment, this simple act, had become more than a repair. It was a symbol of trust, a fragile bridge between two very different species. The council waited. The emperor's silence stretched long, heavier than any voice could be. Every dragon in the chamber leaned forward, aware that the fate of the human rested entirely on one decision. Would he punish him for touching a child, for breaking centuries of tradition? Or would he see what Aaron Vale had already proven, that courage was not always measured in strength or fire, but in care, in patience, in a willingness to act without fear or expectation? Aaron felt the weight of their gaze but did not flinch. He held the toy, he looked at Aelrix, and he waited. The human had no magic, no weapons, no power in dragon terms. He had only his hands, his honesty, and his heart. Somewhere high above, the emperor leaned back slightly, considering. The court whispered anxiously. Judgment was near. The future of a human in the dragon citadel balanced on a single moment. Aaron's simple act of kindness had brought him here, and now the world held its breath, waiting to see if care could survive in a world built on power. The chamber was still. Even the air seemed heavier than usual. Aaron Vale stood in the center, holding the small toy in his hands, while Aelrix pressed close to his leg, wings twitching nervously. The council waited, tense and quiet, knowing that a single word from the emperor would decide everything. The human had no shield, no weapon, nothing but his honesty and care. A sound echoed from above, low and powerful. The floor vibrated slightly, and the massive doors at the back of the hall swung open. Golden light spilled into the chamber as a shadow filled the doorway. Aaron squinted, not sure what he was seeing. The largest dragon he had ever imagined stepped into the room. Scales glimmered like molten gold, and eyes shone brighter than twin suns. The dragon emperor had arrived. A hush fell over the council. Even the loudest voices went silent. No one dared speak. The Emperor's gaze swept across the hall, landing finally on Aaron and the tiny dragon. Golden eyes narrowed slightly, studying the human's posture, his hands, the toy clutched gently between them. You, the Emperor's voice rumbled, deep and commanding, human. Stand. Aaron straightened, unsure whether he should bow, kneel, or speak. He decided to do nothing but meet the dragon's gaze. I am standing, he said softly. The Emperor stepped closer, each movement slow, deliberate, filling the vast chamber with shadow and light. You have touched my child, repaired what was broken, and yet you do not beg, do not fear, do not demand reward. Why? Aaron swallowed, feeling the weight of the question. He glanced down at Aelric's, whose tiny wings twitched anxiously. I only fixed what was broken, he said simply. The toy belonged to the child. It was broken. I helped because someone needed it. That is all. The Emperor's eyes did not leave him. He leaned his massive head closer, nostrils flaring slightly, and breathed a small puff of warm air that ruffled Aaron's hair. All? The Emperor asked, voice quieter but still echoing in the hall. All you know is care? Yes, Aaron said firmly. I do not know power or politics or rules. I only know that something needed help and I could give it. That is all I can do. For a long moment, silence filled the chamber. The council held its breath. Even the noble dragons who had doubted him moments ago were frozen, unsure how to respond. Aaron's words were simple, yet they carried a weight no fire or claw could match. Aelric stepped forward, holding the toy in both claws, pressing it to Aaron's chest. The tiny dragon chirped, circling slowly around him. Aaron smiled, bending down to meet the child's gaze. See? You're happy. That's all that matters, he whispered. The Emperor studied the scene. A human, small and fragile by dragon standards, standing without fear. A tiny dragon, innocent and trusting, relying on him. And a toy, spinning and clicking, bridging the gap between worlds. Golden eyes flickered with curiosity, the first sign of emotion the council had seen in centuries. You are unlike any human I have known, the Emperor said finally. Your kind is clever, yes, but weak. You survive with wit and fire, but you do not command loyalty. Yet you have it without demand. How? Aaron shrugged slightly, unsure how to answer. I do not know, he admitted. I think, maybe because I cared. That is all. The Emperor's massive head tilted, scales glinting. For a moment, even the council felt a tremor of unease. The ruler of dragons had never admitted uncertainty. Yet here he seemed almost thoughtful. Aelric chirped again and nudged the toy against Aaron's hand. The child's tiny eyes looked up at the Emperor, then back at the human. The gesture was clear. This was a bond built on trust, not fear. The Emperor exhaled slowly, a deep rumble that shook the floor slightly. You have reminded me of something long forgotten, he said. Dragons are strong. We take, we command, we rule. But we have forgotten care. We have forgotten kindness without expectation. And you, human, have shown it in moments smaller than any throne or army. Aaron looked at the Emperor, heart pounding. I only fixed a toy, he said. I did not mean to remind anyone of anything. The Emperor's eyes softened slightly. Perhaps that is why it is so powerful, he said. You do not seek recognition. You do not demand reward. You simply care. A murmur ran through the council. Some dragons bowed their heads, realizing the truth in the Emperor's words. Others whispered, unsure whether to accept it. But the chamber no longer felt tense with threat. Instead, it was filled with an odd, quiet respect. The Emperor leaned back slightly, wings folding slowly behind him. Let it be known, he said, voice carrying across the hall, that this human is under my protection. He shall not be harmed, nor questioned for his actions. And the child shall remain with one who has earned trust, not fear. Aelric chirped happily, spinning the toy in the air. Aaron laughed softly, brushing dust from his hands. Relief washed over him, though he remained cautious. He had survived machines and storms, but he had never expected to survive the judgment of a dragon emperor. The council stared, stunned. No human had ever been granted protection by the emperor before. No one had dared defy tradition with such simple courage. The room seemed to hum with the energy of a new understanding. Aaron looked at Aelric, then at the massive figure of the emperor. Thank you, he said quietly. He did not know if dragons accepted thanks in the same way humans did, but he meant it sincerely. The emperor inclined his head slightly, acknowledging the words without speaking further. Go, he said. Care as you have cared. Teach others what you know, human. Perhaps one day it will be remembered. Aaron nodded, gently picking up Aelric's along with the toy. The child chirped happily, wings fluttering. For the first time, the human felt completely at ease in the citadel, not because of power, but because he had shown something that mattered more than strength. A simple act of kindness that had changed the course of judgment. As they left the court, whispers followed them. But they no longer carried fear. They carried wonder. A human had shown dragons what care could do. The tiny dragon chirped again, pressing the toy against Aaron's chest. Aaron laughed softly. "We'll see what adventures come next," he said, smiling. High above, in the throne room, the Emperor watched silently. For the first time in centuries he felt something unfamiliar. Hope. And he knew that a single human had shown the galaxy that strength was not always measured in fire or claws, but in patience, honesty, and the courage to care. Aaron Vale stepped out of the Imperial court, carrying Aelric's in one arm and the repaired toy in the other. The air outside the chamber felt lighter, almost alive. The sunlight reflected off the golden spires of the citadel, and for the first time, Aaron noticed the quiet hum of the city beyond. Dragons moved around him, some curious, some cautious, but none dared challenge him now. He had the Emperor's protection, and that changed everything. Aelric's chirped happily, spinning the toy in its claws. "You really like this, don't you?" Aaron asked, smiling. The dragon answered with a small flutter of its wings and a soft purr. Aaron laughed, brushing a scale from the child's head. The moment was simple, but it carried weight. He had not just fixed a toy, he had built trust, something far rarer than any weapon or treasure in the galaxy. The news of what had happened in the Imperial court spread quickly. Dragons whispered in corridors and over golden balconies. The human had not sought favor. He had not begged for recognition. He had only cared for a small, fragile creature, and in doing so, he had changed the way dragons thought about humans. Aaron walked through the citadel cautiously. He noticed how guards now nodded respectfully, how nobles watched him quietly but without hostility. Even those who had argued for punishment seemed reluctant to speak against him. Something had shifted. The dragons were beginning to see humans differently, not as weak creatures, but as beings capable of loyalty, care, and courage in ways dragons had long forgotten. In the courtyard, Aelric's leapt from Aaron's arm and ran toward a small fountain, toy in hand. The child's laughter echoed, drawing attention from dragons passing by. They stopped to watch, some frowning, others curious. Aaron followed, smiling. "See," he said softly. "Happiness matters. That's all." The Emperor observed silently from a high balcony, eyes following every motion. He had been taught that humans were clever but weak, quick to fight and slow to endure. Yet Aaron had demonstrated something entirely different. A human could act without fear, without desire for reward, and yet influence others more than dragons could with fire or claws. Over the next days, Aaron found himself performing small tasks for the dragons. Fixing broken devices, repairing machinery, sometimes just helping with minor problems that no dragon wanted to touch. Each time he did it with patience and care, speaking kindly, showing no fear. Each time, Aelric's was by his side, curious and joyful. Word reached distant regions of the Empire. Dragons began to observe humans more closely, sending messengers to watch their actions. They noticed how humans treated one another, how they helped without expecting anything in return, how they protected what was small and weak simply because it mattered. The Emperor watched these reports carefully, and his golden eyes glowed with something dragons had not felt in centuries: quiet admiration. One afternoon, Aaron sat with Aelric's by a fountain, repairing a small broken mechanism. The toy spun and clicked in its claws. Aelric's looked at him and chirped. "You know," Aaron said, "it's not the machines that are important. It's what we do for each other that matters most." The dragon tilted its head, listening as if it understood every word. Across the citadel, dragons began to whisper among themselves. "Humans are not as weak as we thought," one said. "They care for things we forget. They inspire loyalty and trust." Another added, "Perhaps we have been too proud, too focused on power. There is something in them we can learn from." Aaron did not hear these whispers. He did not need to. He had learned it himself through his small actions. He had discovered that influence could come from honesty, care, and patience. Strength was not always measured in fire or claws. Sometimes, it was measured in simple acts of kindness that no one noticed until they changed the world. Aelric's chirped again, pressing the toy against Aaron's chest. Aaron laughed softly, brushing a hand over the dragon's back. "We've made quite an impression, haven't we?" he said. The tiny dragon chirped in response, spinning the toy and fluttering its wings. High above, the Emperor observed silently. He had watched humans for decades, Yet none had ever done what Aaron had done. The small gestures, the quiet patience, the honesty, they carried more weight than any army. He realized that dragons had overlooked something vital. Humans had a different kind of power. A power rooted in care, in connection, in the ability to inspire trust and loyalty without fear or force. In the following weeks, the citadel itself seemed to change. Guards treated humans with more respect, not because they feared the Emperor's judgment, but because they had seen what humans could offer. Dragons began to teach younger dragons to observe humans, to learn from their small acts of kindness, their patience and their courage. Aaron continued his work quietly, never seeking recognition. He repaired broken devices, mended small mechanisms and shared quiet moments with Aelrix. Each small action, unnoticed by many, created ripples that changed the Empire's view of humans forever. One evening as the sun set behind the golden towers, Aaron and Aelrix watched the sky together. The toy spun between them, clicking and whirring in the fading light. Aaron smiled, realizing how far things had come. A small toy, a tiny dragon, and a single human had started a change that even the greatest dragons could not ignore. The Emperor watched from his throne in silence, golden eyes glowing. He understood now that humans were not weak. They were different. They acted with care, courage and honesty, and in doing so, they could shape the hearts of dragons in ways the Empire had never imagined. Aaron glanced down at Aelrix, who chirped softly, tail flicking in contentment. "We've done well," he said quietly. The dragon's eyes shone with understanding, and the tiny creature curled against him, wings wrapped around his arm. The citadel had learned something new. Humans were not just creatures to tolerate or control. They were teachers in their own way. They could inspire loyalty, trust, and hope without a single threat. And somewhere deep within the Emperor, a spark had ignited, a quiet realization that perhaps the galaxy needed humans more than dragons had ever admitted. Aaron Vale had arrived in the citadel to repair a toy. He had left having repaired far more than that. He had repaired hearts, challenged old beliefs, and reminded dragons that care, patience and courage were powerful tools, sometimes stronger than fire, claws or thrones. Aelrix chirped once more, toy spinning between claws. Aaron laughed softly. "Yes, little one," he said. "Humans have a lot to teach. And we'll keep showing them." The tiny dragon chirped in agreement, and together they looked at the sky, knowing that even in a galaxy ruled by dragons, a human's simple heart could make all the difference. The Empire had learned. The dragons had learned. And somewhere in the golden throne room the Emperor smiled quietly, understanding that humans were a force unlike any he had ever faced, a force born not of fire but of care.